welcome to another episode of We're in Trouble Now. And you are joining Robert and I in our kitchen as we're going to discuss this week's topic. And this week is my week to start on, or I'm going to be presenting the subject.
Yeah.
And I decided to pick it up kind of where we left off last week. Because last week you had me do the love language test. And it got me to thinking, like, how many, because we have a different love language.
Yes.
So it got me to thinking, like, how many other different forms of communication do we have that's different? I mean, if we like to express and to receive love differently, how many other aspects of our relationship are we missing cues on?
Sure.
Because I did a little research because as everybody may or may not know, Robert and I and Brandon are on this journey to kind of rebuild and to reformulate our relationships together. You know, learning communication, learning how each other works, listening to each other, respecting each other as individuals. So to me, as a mom, I always think like I have my kids dialed in. But I really didn't realize how much I didn't have my kids dialed in until we took that test.
Yeah.
Because last week I even guessed at Brandon's love language and I was wrong. He's like me.
Yeah. Almost identical.
Almost identical. So it kind of got me to thinking. And then I'm like, well, you know what? Gosh, how hard for Robert, because I mean, Brandon and I have the same love language and we can just be like, beep, 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 beep.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're like, well, what about me? You know, you don't receive love the same way, or that's not like your primary.
I don't receive love. It's I don't show love the same way.
Well, also too, I think that it's how you show it, but it's also too, in my research that I did, it's how you would like to receive it. You know, because I mean, if you're sitting there and you're like, my primary love language is acts of, what was it? Acts of.
It's like words of.
No, mine's were words of affirmation. Yours were acts where you actually do something.
Let's see what mine was.
Okay.
Mine was words of affirmation.
That's mine and Brandon's,
No,
actually.
Mine was 33%. Do you still have yours?
Yeah, let me pull mine
Because mine
out.
was words of affirmation, followed by acts of service. Yours, if I remember correctly, was quality time, and then I believe it was quality time and then acts of service.
Okay, hold on, because I thought it was something totally different. Okay, yeah, so mine were words of affirmation.
Were they?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I thought yours is words of affirmation also? No, because yours is acts of service.
I have my test right here. See?
Oh, okay. Because I was under we have the exact same. So then, because last week you were saying like how you set up my computer and everything is like how you're showing love, but that's acts of service, not words of encouragement.
Yeah, but they're like one's 33%, the other's 30%.
Oh, okay.
That'd be the equivalent of like an A and an A minus. They're still A's.
All right. So, but my point being is like, that's how you give love, but that's also too how you would want to receive love. Because I mean, you wouldn't want me to be there and be like all touchy feely because that's not something that you like.
Yeah.
So again, in building our brand new, like sort of, communication buildings, I think it's important that we know how each other likes to give and receive love.
Sure.
Which I am totally blown away because I was under the impression that Brandon and I were one way and you were the other.
In some regards, yeah. I think we're a little bit more same than I think we remember.
Okay.
But I do think that you and Brandon show love a little differently than I do. Yeah.
Okay. So, but that's what I was thinking. And then again, the original concept of today's subject is basically, well, what other forms of communication do we, are we the same at or are we different at?
Yeah.
So along those lines, I decided to go ahead and do a little bit more research, and I came across the quiz of how you like to be basically apologized to and for, how acts of apology.
Sure.
So I already took my test, and what I found interesting on my test is I went through the majority of the test saying how I apologize to people,
Really?
not how
Receive apology.
not how I receive it.
Mhm.
And it really made me stop and take a hard, deep dive of, I feel like I'm constantly apologizing.
Mhm.
You know, I feel like I'm constantly on the like, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And to me, actually receiving an apology was almost like a foreign thought.
Mhm.
And I thought that was kind of like, it was weird. It was like, I think I need to shift something in my way of thinking, because I don't think that that's a good way to.
No, I mean, it definitely is not like a good way of like even just walking around thinking that you're constantly at fault. And I know that you've mentioned this a couple of times, how you feel like you're always the one who has to apologize, or you're always the one at fault. And maybe it's just how you're perceiving yourself more than anything.
Well, I think a lot of it goes into with like the whole, in rebuilding our communication, it's like, I mean, I think part of it falls back to the way I mothered you and Brandon.
Sure.
I feel like I'm not going in on an even playing field.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that I have taken it so far to the extreme of, and I don't want to come across like I'm like coming in as a victim, because I don't think I'm doing that.
Yeah.
But I think I'm definitely coming in with some, you okay over there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I'm coming in with a lot of like, not a whole lot of confidence.
Well, I think maybe some of that lack of confidence comes up because Brandon and I are the children, you are the parent. So you are admittedly do bear a lot of responsibility for, the upbringing and things like that. So maybe, I don't know, maybe you're just beating yourself up too much.
Yeah. And truthfully, and I think that again, a lot of it stems back to my childhood too, just how I have like a certain love language.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of my, I was always like invisible, and I would like almost apologize for being seen. I think a lot of it is like it's deep rooted.
Sure.
So it was just kind of like a in the face last night where I'm like, no, Lonnie, you got to stop doing that.
Yeah.
So I went all the way back to the beginning and I retook my test.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it is.
Are you going to share what you scored before and then after?
Well, I
'Cause
I didn't continue the test.
Okay.
Because you know what, truthfully, I caught myself and it was immediate. I didn't want to go forward anymore. I was just like, I was kind of mortified that I just kind of immediately took the stance of like how I need to apologize people
Okay.
instead of giving myself any self-worth and telling myself that I'm worthy of receiving an apology every once in a while.
Okay.
So, but I do really quick, I do want to go in because I think that this is really important for every test that we've done. But what I did find is that we have a tendency to express our love language for someone in the way that we want to most be loved in return.
Sure.
I think that could apply for an apology also.
Okay.
If we go in and we have different forms of apologies, I think that we're automatically going to go in and apologize the way we want the apology.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really important in all of these building skills of communication to not so much project what we want, but to understand that what the needs of the other person is.
That's fair.
And I think that that's really important. And I think part of the problem where I have been ever since my sobriety, where I was trying to super mom, is I was projecting my needs above yours and Brandon's.
I don't know about needs, but I can definitely, I understand what you're coming from. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
to me, it's on a mission, not only to heal myself, but to heal how I project.
Sure.
So I did the quiz last night, and my number one at 32% is request forgiveness.
Okay.
So I want people to ask me to forgive them.
You want people to ask? Oh, okay. What does the little topic say?
Okay. But first I'm curious as to what yours was.
Mine was accept responsibility.
Oh,
At 31%.
okay. So at 32%, I said in some relationships, a mate wants to hear their partner physically ask for forgiveness. They want assurance that their mate, or I say child, parent, or person, recognizes the need for forgiveness. Asking for forgiveness shows that you realize you have done something wrong and that you are willing to put the future of the relationship in the hands of the offended mate. Requesting forgiveness is not easy. It often leaves one vulnerable to rejection. Many people have a hard time seeking forgiveness because it means admitting that you have failed. The only way to overcome this fear is to recognize that it is a very common amongst mankind. The commonality makes it okay to be a failure. It allows a stubborn mate to apologize to the partner and become a healthy individual. Ultimately, it's important to remember that there is a difference between asking for forgiveness and demanding forgiveness. When we demand forgiveness, we tend to forget the nature of forgiveness. Forgiveness is a choice an offered party is supposed to make. Demanding forgiveness takes away the sincerity of asking for it. Remember not to treat forgiveness lightly. It is something to be cherished and appreciated. The act of forgiveness is hard on both ends, for the person who is asking for it and for the person who is accepting it.
Okay.
So I basically, I guess what it kind of boils down to, and you can give me your opinion on this, but it's just basically somebody to admit they're wrong and to just be like, you know what, I've done you wrong, and the power is in your hand whether or not you are going to forgive me or not. That's how I read into it.
See, I don't like when I think of this love language test, I was never the one asking for forgiveness. I was the one that somebody was they were asking me to forgive them. So I think fundamentally you and I took the test in two different point of views.
So how did you take the test?
As if somebody was apologizing to me.
It is.
Yeah. Okay. I just want to make sure.
Yeah. So if somebody's going to apologize to me, what I want is for them to admit that they were wrong and ask me for my forgiveness.
Oh, okay.
See what I'm saying?
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Mine, the one that you scored, what was that? That was request forgiveness. Mine was only 15%.
Okay. So what was your main one?
Accept responsibility.
So go ahead and read that one.
It says, it is very difficult for some people to admit that they're wrong. It makes them doubt their self-worth, and no one likes to be portrayed as a failure. However, as adults, we must all admit that we make and will make mistakes. We are going to make poor decisions and that hurt our mates, and we are going to have to admit that we were wrong. We have to accept responsibility for our failures. For many individuals, all they want to hear are the words, I am wrong. If the apology neglects accepting responsibility for their actions, many partners will not feel as though the apology was meaningful and sincere. Many partners need to learn how to overcome their ego, the desire to not be viewed as a failure, and simply admit that their actions were wrong. For a mate who speaks their apology language, if an apology does not admit fault, it is not worth hearing. Being sincere in your apology means allowing yourself to be weak and admitting that you have made mistakes. Though this may be hard to do, some people for some people it makes a world of difference to your partner who speaks this language.
So putting this in real life perspective. So if I did something to upset you and I needed to apologize, you would just basically want me to be like, hey, I know I'm wrong. I know I shouldn't have done it that way.
Yeah.
And then you would be fine with it. Whereas I would be like, again, I think mine's a little bit harsher, where you'd be like, hey, I know I was wrong and hopefully you will forgive me.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's more harsh. I think it varies, but yeah, mine isn't so much like, oh, well, I did wrong. But I think people admitting their mistakes is, like the thing says, it takes a lot for somebody to admit that they were wrong. It takes a lot for people to admit that they were not correct, and showing that shows a little bit of humility. And I think it would make me feel better knowing that they acknowledge that their shortcomings.
Right.
So
see, and getting really deep into it, and I've have been wondering about this, but I think mine comes from that is because it's like the people who have wronged me in my life, they never
asked for your forgiveness.
Yeah. And they never even admitted that they did anything wrong, let alone ask for forgiveness.
Sure.
So for me, it's like, really, it's for me feeling like I'm taking my power back.
Sure.
Of I don't have to forgive you. You can ask me to forgive you, but that doesn't mean I have to.
Yeah.
And again, it kind of like that deeper kind of for me, it's really important to feel like I'm in control of a lot of areas of my life.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You know what I mean? So then I came in at 28% of making restitution. What was your second?
Mine was planned change.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
See, to me, it's this is kind of funny. So making restitution means in our society, many people believe that wrong acts demand justice. The one who commits the crime should pay for their wrongdoing. So it's restitution. Is that what I said? Yeah. Make restitution. A mate who speaks this love language feels the same way towards apologies. They believe that in order to be sincere, the person who is apologizing should justify their actions. The mate who's been hurt simply wants to hear that their mate still loves them. There are many effective ways to demonstrate sincerity in an apology. each mate must learn the other's love language in order to complete the act of restitution. Though some mates may feel as though all is forgiven with a bouquet of flowers, that may not necessarily work for all mates. Every mate should uncover what their parents' main love language is: words of affirmation, quality time, acts of service, blah, 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 and use that specific language in order to make the restitutions in the most effective way. For a mate whose primary apology language is making restitutions, no matter how often you say "I'm sorry" or "I was wrong," your mate will never find the apology sincere. You must show strong efforts to make amends. A genuine apology will be accompanied by the assurance that you still love your mate and have the desire to right the wrongdoings committed.
Interesting.
Yeah,
See, I only scored 4% on that.
really.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so you see, because I only scored 4% on planned change.
Interesting.
Yeah. So what does it say about planned change?
It says, for some individuals, planned change is the convincing factor in an apology. Some mates will doubt the sincerity of an apology if it is not accompanied by their partner's desire to modify their behavior to avoid the situation in the future. And it says, admitting you are in the wrong creates vulnerability. It allows your mate to get a glimpse of your heart. The glimpse of true self is assurance that the apology was sincere. One important aspect of planned change is verbalizing your desire to change. Your mate cannot read your mind, though you may be trying to change inside. If you do not verbalize your desire to change to your mate, most likely they will still be hurt. It is also important to make a dedicated plan for change. Often apologies involving change fail because the person never establishes steps of action to help ensure success. Taking baby steps towards change instead of insisting on changing all at once will increase your chances of successfully changing your ways. It is important to remember that change is hard. Constructive change does not mean we will immediately be successful. There will be highs and lows on the road of change. You must remember that anyone can change their ways if they truly and genuinely ready for change.
Yeah. See, that's interesting because to me, I think I scored so low on planned change is because I can remember like your dad would always be like, I'm going to do better. I'm sorry this won't happen again, or I'm sorry things are going to get better. So for me, it was just kind of like, it's like, you know what, don't tell me you're going to plan to change something, just do it. Whereas I can see with you, it is so important because for you, it's like, if somebody says they're going to do something, they better do it because you're like, you need to be a person of your word.
I hold people accountable to their words. And like, if somebody was like, you know, hey, like, for example, if you just pair it back and forth with accept responsibility and plan changes, hey, you know, I acknowledge that I was wrong. Like I totally messed up, you know, like it's, it was my fault that the X, Y, and Z. I'm going to start doing this to make sure that doesn't happen again. Then I will take them for, I'll take them for their word, and I'll be like, okay, well, they've acknowledged that they've not only are in the wrong, but they have already found a solution to make sure that that we won't be in this situation again.
Exactly.
And so, like you say, like I hold people accountable to their words. And, I feel like it's back to back kind of thing. I think you can't just have one apology with one of like the tiers. I think both accept responsibility and plan change is really how I would accept an apology.
Yeah, because you would really, in order to simplify it a little bit, it would almost be like, you know what, Robert, I'm really sorry that I didn't value your time. What I'll do in the future is make sure like I only ask you for help while you're not streaming. Yeah. So that way it just kind of is like, yeah, you know what, she understands. She's asked for, she's apologized.
She's accepting responsibility and she's planned for change so that this situation won't happen again.
Exactly. And whereas with mine, it's basically like, can you forgive me for doing that? And my love language again was words of affirmation. And it would just be something like, hey, you know what? I'm really sorry I did that. Hopefully you can forgive me. You know what? I value you as a person.
Yeah. Your time means a lot to me.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
It's like just, having positive words just basically again, and it makes me sound kind of like a power hungry kind of person. But for me, it's a very, very important mental health thing for me to feel like if somebody is hurting me, I have the ability to be like, no, you're no longer allowed to do that to me. Yeah. Kind of thing.
That's understandable.
Where it's, and I don't want it to come across like I'm the Queen of Hearts and Alice in Wonderland, where I'm like, off with your heads. Yeah. But it's more like the sincerity of like, hey, you know what? I know I did wrong.
Well, it's like you say, when you were younger and when you were married with dad, right? You didn't have any power.
Mm-hmm.
And now this is the first time where you are able to express your power over yourself. And like you say, you are able to choose whether or not to forgive somebody.
Yeah.
And, that in itself is growth from even just a couple of years ago,
Yeah. But also too, on the same hand, it's like, I'm sitting here and I'm like, you know what? I feel like maybe I can soften up a little bit. I don't always have to be on the attack.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know, maybe you're always on the attack because you've spent so many years like
being attacked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And part of me is like, when I was reading these, like this whole forgiveness thing, it's like, there's just no softness in it.
Yeah.
And and especially if we're building like our relationships again, I don't want it to be where you and Brandon feel like you have to come in. I don't want you to have to apologize to me the same way like your dad would have to.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
It's understandable.
I think that there should be more kindness and compassion when it comes to my children.
Yeah.
Yeah. In all honesty.
Well, one is Brandon and I coming to you with an apology. The other one is dad telling you what you want to hear. Kind of thing. So I think they're apples and oranges in regards to that. I think, but I do understand what you're talking about in terms of like, Brandon and I shouldn't have to worry or be afraid of you not accepting our apology.
Yeah. Because it's just this is the whole thing. It's like, truthfully, I think if you and Brandon came to me with any one of these kind of apologies, I would take it.
Sure.
Because that's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Okay. So now right in the middle, and I'm assuming right in the middle of yours also is expressing regret.
Yes.
Okay. So
mine was 23%.
Mine was 20. So expressing regret means expressing regret is the apology language that zeroes out in an emotional hurt. It is the admission of guilt and shame for causing pain to another person. For those who listen for expressing regret apologies, a simple "I'm sorry" is all they look for. There is no need for explanation or payback provided the apology has truly come from the heart. Expressing regret is a powerful apology language because it gets right to the point. It doesn't make excuses or attempt to deflect blame. Above all, expressing regret only takes ownership of the wrong. So let me read that again. Above all, expressing regret takes ownership of the wrong. For the reason, expressing regret is understood as a sincere commitment to repair and rebuild the relationship. The expressing regret apology language speaks most clearly when the person offering the apology reflects sincerely, not only verbally, but also through body language. Unflinching eye contact, a gentle but firm touch are two ways that body language can underscore sincerity. So I thought that was interesting. But to me, I think we've both been both emotionally hurt to the point where just a simple apology isn't going to work.
Yeah, especially too, like, I think I'm pretty good at character. Like, I can tell when somebody doesn't mean it.
Yeah.
And so that would only make me more upset. So, like, it's not that it, it's like it says, like, expressing regret, like, people are like, it's interesting too, because, like, now that I'm thinking about it out loud, like, Daryl, no, he would never did anything wrong, but there would be times where he'd be like, something happened instead of, I don't know, or maybe Daryl even do it, but whenever I think of something like this, I always think of Daryl saying it, but just be like, yeah, you know what, I'm sorry, like, like I fucked up, and sometimes that's all I need. It's just like, oh yeah, but like, because
the thing is that you knew that Daryl,
I meant it, yeah,
and you knew how much he valued you as a person,
yeah. Yeah, but I don't know, for some reason, whenever I think of like expressing regret and people just being like, you know what, dude, you're right. There's no excuse for what I did. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I think of Daryl saying it, and then I can acknowledge that, like, that's a sincere apology, which is probably why it scored right in the middle.
Yeah.
Because I think it depends on who it's coming from.
Yeah.
If it's coming from somebody who I know isn't like willingly like or on purposely doing this, or somebody who like genuinely I know is already messed up and is genuinely apologizing, that's all they have to say. It's like, yeah, dude, you're right, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, which
is interesting because, and you know what, and truthfully, it's like, I understand it. I think I have, I mean, as your mom, I think I have more to prove. Whereas like Daryl never hurt you when you were younger. I'm kind of, it's not that I'm undoing wrongs, but I am,
you're in a different starting
fixing.
block than Daryl.
Yeah. I'm coming in with a deficit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, where Daryl, like, you knew where you stood with Daryl. He had an even playing field, like you said.
Yeah.
Whereas you kind of have to not earn that trust, but you definitely have a little bit of lead weights in your shoes.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know what? And truthfully, for anybody who doesn't know who Daryl is out there, he was a coworker of ours who really did fill in a lot of the whole dad vibes. And
I don't think so.
You
I
didn't-
looked at him as a role model. I didn't look at him
Yeah.
as a father figure.
okay.
He was somebody who I looked up to, but he was never anybody that was like, oh, they're. I think Barry would fall into those shoes of a father figure more
Okay.
than Daryl did.
Oh, okay.
I looked up to Daryl a lot. There was a lot of things about Daryl who I really liked, but I never thought of him as a dad.
Oh, okay.
I think it's just because I was just too old by then.
Okay.
Whereas like I didn't need a father figure. Whereas Barry was when I was younger.
Yeah.
And he reminded me more of like, maybe it's because he was maybe around Papa's age.
Yeah, because he was
And
older.
and I looked up to Papa like a
Yeah.
father figure. So Daryl was a role model. I would definitely inspire to be him, but yeah, I would say so.
Oh, cool.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? And what's really cool about these conversations that we've been having and these quizzes that we've been taking, it's like a lot of these understandings of different languages are kind of like filling over and kind of seeping into other areas of my life.
Sure.
Like, for example, if you don't mind me mentioning it, it's like with the whole like live stream thing, it was really bothering me that I was in the role of where I didn't know how to operate my own system without your help.
Yeah.
And it was really triggering me to being like, well, I don't want to ask him. If I ask him, you know what, I'm going to get my feelings hurt. I'm not going to get I'm not going to get like this
Positive response.
Yeah, I'm not going to get a positive, warm, fuzzy feeling out of having to interrupt his stream
Yeah.
in order to fix mine.
Yeah.
And so but I never, a couple of months ago, I never would have realized that. You know what? I would have taken the whole victim role
Yeah.
and been like, Robert's disappointed in me again. And yesterday, when I was going through it and I was learning things on my own, I actually caught myself, Robert, going, I bet you Robert's going to be proud of me. And I literally stopped myself and I'm like, why in the bleepity bleep 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 are you putting that responsibility on Robert?
Yeah.
You're not living your life to get praise from your oldest child.
Yeah.
You know what? Give him his space. Give him his role in life as your oldest child.
Yeah.
And so it's really opening up these avenues of communication in my own self. And it's making me proud of myself that I'm doing that.
Yeah.
And then on the other hand, it's making me completely mortified that I did that to you for so long.
Yeah.
That I was so desperately seeking like some sort of positive reinforcement. I was almost forcing it out of you.
That's fair. I definitely see that. And I think that's really cool for you to make that acknowledgement.
Yeah.
Because 100% is something that would happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what? And this is my apology. I saw what happened. I am so sorry for it. And I am, oh shoot. And I am, I have a game plan in order to make that not happen.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it.
Yeah. So, my GoPro battery just went out.
It did. Yeah. It's okay.
So I did realize that. And it's been a really cool journey. And I really, really want you to know that these conversations are leading to more realizations, just like the whole, like, I don't have to go through life apologizing,
Yeah.
Yeah. So I value you as who you are. You are my oldest son.
I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Well, I think this is a really cool test. I didn't realize that there was an apology love language.
You know what? And that's just the whole thing. It's like that love language has absolutely 100% triggered so many more like areas of where we are just assuming the other person, we're communicating on the same level,
Yeah.
and we really aren't.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So it's like a journey. It's like, now it's like, okay, so what's the next
Yeah.
form of communication we need to understand
Sure.
about
Well,
each
just,
other?
yeah, like you say, like it unlocks a little bit more mystery, and it leaves a lot like of guesswork. You know, like some of these things we're saying, you can't read your partner's mind,
Yeah.
but you can understand their intentions through their actions, kind of thing.
Yeah,
it makes a
and-
lot of sense.
Yeah, and I absolutely think that these tests translate over to any sort of like friend, family, child, parent. It doesn't matter who you are. We all communicate.
Mm-hmm.
And if you really want to build on that communication, it's really super important
Absolutely.
to keep going.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I dig it.
All right.
Awesome. Well, do you want to tell them where to find us, Mom?
Yeah, I'm sitting here and I'm like, okay, so what am I going to do with that video? And I'm just going to show a picture of us and they can hear the audio.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody got to hear my apology, but really the only important one is you.
Yeah.
So, all right. As always, I want to thank you for hanging out with us and for listening. And if you want to check out any of Robert's channels, he is Robert Pike on Instagram. He is Sherbert on Twitch, YouTube, and TikTok. And I am Gray Hair and Tattoos across the board. And as always, I really appreciate you hanging out with us as we talk
Yeah.
about life in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Yeah, little Indy's coming in and she says hi too. Oh, nope, there's
Trying to-
she.
yeah.
She's going to go check on Pam. All right,
Awesome.
everyone. See you next week.
All right. Bye.
Bye.